I'm here today with Alice Cheng. She's the founder and CEO of Culinary Agents. How are you doing today, Alice?
I'm great, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Very excited today. So, Alice, this is a very exciting for me. I rarely get to talk with somebody who's even staffing adjacent when it comes to our industry. So I'm pretty excited to have a conversation with you here today. Would you mind just talking to the listeners about a little bit more about who you are, kind of how you got here, and then I'd love to know a little bit about Culinary Agents.
Sure. I'm a New Yorker who loves to eat at restaurants and have a deep respect for the hospitality industry. I worked in food service when I was younger in various positions for several years and just loved everything about it. And then took I'll call it a hiatus because I eventually career changed back and went to work in technology for many years at IBM. And I got to work on cool startup things on the East Coast, West Coast, around the world. And throughout this time, all of my friends who were still working in hospitality were progressing in their careers. And kind of as my personal side hustle, I was helping them with things like resumes and just kind of tweaking their bullet points to make it sound much more aligned with what people expect resumes to sound like. And I noticed that there was a lack of tools to help them find jobs, connect with employers, really take their skills and their accomplishments and brag about them in a very efficient and effective way. And over the years, as those folks progressed and became restaurant owners and business owners or leaders within the industry, I noticed that nothing had really changed with the tools. And so I started Culinary Agents. And I said, there has to be something that is like a LinkedIn meets Match.com for jobs that allows you as talent to have a professional presence online and to be able to brag about yourself in a very factual way with your resume, your fact, your skills, and then use that to apply to jobs and to find jobs, and vice versa for businesses to be able to easily and effectively promote themselves and their employer brand and invite applicants and folks to apply and build their teams.
Well, that is awesome. I think it's always exciting to talk to somebody who's not only an advocate for the industry, but has literally built a business around being an incredible advocate for the team that's out there. That's really interesting. So how was this? I mean, how was this like born or grown? I mean, I think, having a network of friends and saying, LinkedIn meets Match.com. Like, how did you build this out? I mean, how did you grow to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I should elaborate a little bit more on the 13 years in the technology company that I worked at, which essentially allowed me to kind of pick and choose and build a lot of the skills that I would eventually need to break out and start my own company and do something like this. The company IBM that I worked at for many years was a great place with a lot of resources that allowed me to do many things. But it was interesting because during the time that I was coming up with the idea, I drew a lot of parallels with my personal experience while navigating my career at IBM. I had joined in a very unconventional way. Through the mailroom. I just needed a job. So I took a temp position in the mailroom because it fit with my full-time school schedule. And it was fine. It was, you go in, clock in, do your work, leave, no additional stress or drama, and, go to school, all night and then do it again the next day. And quickly after I joined, I got kind of plucked to go be a full-time employee within IBM as an assistant. So I did my admin work very well. I got noticed, and I got promoted, and it was great. And from there, I connected with this small unit that was focusing on the future of unstructured digital content. And I was studying stuff like that, the future of the internet. I'm going to date myself. And I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was fascinating that in the future, and this is pre-iPhone, in the future, you'd be able to, listen to digital music on devices and purchase, and that, and artists and other folks would be able to build businesses and become, entrepreneurs and all this stuff. And also video, you'd be able to watch video, on devices, portable devices, and all these things. And that really opened my eyes to kind of how technology, when applied a specific way, can really reinvent a whole industry. And throughout this time, I continued to be very intentional about the jobs that I took, the experiences that I wanted, and the skills that I wanted to acquire within the company. And that's exactly what I did. And I got to work, learn my skills in sales, operations, marketing. And when the time came and I just couldn't, hold it in any longer as far as my entrepreneurial spirit, I kind of said, better late than never. There's never a good time. You just do it. You just Nike, you do it. You cash in your chips, literally,
Right.
and go for it and cross your fingers.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Okay. So, one of the things that you said, and I'm sitting here thinking this is resonating with me so much, right? I am a horrible self-promoter, right? Like and it sounds really weird for a guy with a podcast, but I am a horrible self-promoter. So if I'm in the industry, right, and I've been in hospitality all my life, what are some of the things I'm talking about when I go to brag about myself, right? When I have this brag kind of, get my skill set, get myself out there, what kind of things are resonating these days, or what kind of things should I be talking about?
Yeah. So first of all, secret, not so secret. I too am a terrible personal promoter. Like, I am the worst. And people who know me well will probably be laughing when I say that. So the first trick, the hint that I will give to you, all those folks who are listening who are nodding their head and saying, yeah, I don't, for whatever reason, I just don't like promoting myself, or I'm terrible at those things. The trick is, find your friend who is the best at promoting others and have them brag about you. It is absolutely, I always joke around, I'm the worst at promoting myself, but the first person that somebody will call to promote somebody else, because that's me, that's what I like to do. And that's essentially kind of what informed and what drove me to start Culinary Agents, right? My personal frustration of seeing all these talented people who I was friendly with, and I enjoyed, just not being able to articulate, or not wanting to, for good reason. I think being humble is an excellent quality, but there's a difference between self-promotion and stating facts, I'll say. And that's kind of the approach that we took. So to answer your question, after my hint, which is, find your friend who's like awesome at promoting others, and like latch onto them. And my my answer to your question would be, things that you want to highlight, that are factual on your resume, or on whatever form that you're using to apply to a job, or when you're speaking to somebody. Just, if it's difficult, also just bullet them out and have them in your pocket. Like, you talk about factual things, your experience, things that you've done. Naturally, it'll be obvious how skilled you are, or how much experience you have, based upon those facts.
All right. All right. That's awesome, because I got facts for days. So, okay. So, from where you sit today, or even in the last few years, because everybody's focused on this whole post-pandemic, great resignation, great regret, great whatever we're calling it these days, right? But what kind of skills, or facts are people kind of keying in on and hiring people for these days? Are there any trends you're seeing around that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the unique things about the hospitality industry is that there are so many different types of positions that make up a team at any given point. And then layer on top of it, that there's a lot of, personal preference. There's a lot of, does this fit in the culture or the concept, et cetera. So, taking into consideration all of the different variations and permutations, if you boiled it down to, the baseline, you look at employers who are really focusing in on, kind of the soft skills, the intangible, the attitude, the willingness to assist, the teaming, the how they approach things, how they think. In addition to, especially, of course, for certain positions that require some actual technical skills as well. But given the fact that talent sourcing and hiring in this industry has always been a challenge pre-pandemic, right? And that's, that's why culinary agents exist. It's been a challenge for both sides, right? It's
Right.
difficult for talent to kind of set themselves apart, other than what they can put on their paper, or what they can show during a trail, and difficult for businesses and hiring managers to be able to do that as well. There's a lot more, I would say, businesses that are willing to train, or willing to, if they find the right person who's a cultural fit, who has the right attitude and checks off certain boxes, the thinking is, okay, well, we'll get them into the program, or get them onto the team, and then pair them up with someone, or get them into the program if they have something structured, and then they'll learn and progress from there, as long as they have the foundation. And that seems to be something that continues to be successful for businesses who are, looking for people of all ranges of skill level and positions.
That's awesome, because I think I think people, at least people I know in the industry, and I've talked to people at every level, a lot of them are kind of wondering what people are looking for these days, right? And it used to be that you had been a rooms director, you had been part of food and beverage, and that you checked off a bunch of skill boxes so that they didn't have to teach you anything when you got in, right? Like you could just step in and do the job, right? It's encouraging to know that people are looking for the person, the soft skill, and then are willing to teach, because that's something that maybe wasn't there leading up to the pandemic. I think because we had a ton of people in the industry, and it was almost flush with labor at certain levels. So I think that's really good to hear.
Yeah, I think that the shift, or the difference, you hit it on the head, is that prior to, it was a little bit more like I'm looking for specific. Like I think, one thing that I would always say when somebody said, "Oh, is there a line cook shortage?" Because that tended to be like the topic of choice
Right.
pre-pandemic, right? And I would always say, no, there's not a shortage, but employers are specific with what they're looking for and the skill level, that they want. So if they can't find that exact kind of combination, then to them, sure, there's a shortage, right? There's a shortage of that specific type of skilled line cook that you're looking for. But as far as like folks applying to jobs, and people, graduating from culinary school, or just coming up through the ranks, like there were a lot of them that were looking for and hoping for the opportunity to progress.
Absolutely. And so, when I think about, when I think kind of the position that people are probably in right now, I think of kind of something you keyed in on earlier, right? Is that, you had a lot of friends that were progressing in the industry, and you made the decision to kind of take jobs that built your skill set, right? You went here because you need to learn this, you went there because you needed to learn that. How do you make that decision to forego maybe like the quick promotions in order to be able to gain the skill set for the long game? How does that play out in your mind?
That's tough in general, right? And I think that's a very personal decision, because not everyone has the luxury to forego a promotion for monetary reasons, for any reason, right? And I think in general, unless that promotion is something that you're not going to learn anything, or is totally, I think you can find benefits to justify, I would say, taking those promotions if you need to. For me personally, because I started at IBM through the mailroom, I was, kind of like, I can equate it to maybe like starting as a dishwasher, but I was very low on the totem pole. I mean, I was as far as rank wise, and also pay wise. And so throughout my time there, I struggled with the fact that even if I got a promotion or got a big bump, I was still, my starting point was so low that it was still very difficult to even get into the right ballpark. And that, was personally what I struggled with a lot over the years, because I was getting this great experience. I was networking and learning and all these things, but I was struggling financially for many years. And I was vocal about it to, management, and in a very professional way, and just continue to look for those opportunities. So I think, advice that I would give in any sort of a parallel, because I understand that IBM is very different than a restaurant or hospitality business. Is also like know your audience. If you're working for a small mom and pop shop that you've reached your full potential and there's no more you can do there. I mean, have an open, honest conversation with your management team, and hopefully they're open to it. What we see now very often, especially given the current environment, is employers are absolutely looking at different ways to support and help their team grow. Right? It's a necessity now, I think, for employers to retain their best and brightest and most promising by offering them more opportunities or more pay or whatever. And at the very least, having a dialogue with them to say, how can I support? And so on the flip side, thinking through those types of things as a job seeker before you go out and start hunting, what are your personal needs and priorities? What are you hoping to get out of the job, your next job, or another job? And being clear about that so you can have that open dialogue up front, right? Because if that's not hashed out and you start somewhere and you realize that that isn't the case and it's not meeting your needs, then then you're in a tough spot, and potentially the employer is in a tough spot as well.
I think that's really insightful because I mean, a lot of people, and again, this is, over years, over decades of watching is, people expect, a manager to tap them on the head and say, okay, it's time to grow, or it's time to move, or it's time to do something different. And I feel like one of the great things that's happened is this empowerment you're talking about, right? Is the ability to be able to say, hey, I need to grow. Let's figure out how to get me there. And then it becomes a two-way street, right? As opposed to just waiting for somebody to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I think it's time to grow, right? Like,
Yeah. And there's different ways that you can approach that, right? And I think sometimes people approach it one way, which may or may not be produce the results that they want. A suggested way to approach it would be having a very honest, thoughtful conversation about it, and knowing that you have already done the work, or you are at a point where you truly believe that it's time for that conversation, right? Sometimes if the conversation is a little premature, it could come off as abrasive or arrogant. So there's this balance between rushing it and truly learning and getting what you want and what you think you should get out of your role, whether it's skills or et cetera, and having an ongoing dialogue with your management, right? This is what I hope to be. This is where I hope to go. This is what I'm working towards. Help put the onus on them. Help me get there. Like, what do I need to do in order for me to be able to achieve that promotion in a realistic time? And then ask them, what is the realistic time, right? 6 months, 1 year, et cetera. And the more you have that conversation versus in a demanding way, I think people will see that employers are very open to this conversation, and it will work to their advantage.
That's awesome. And the whole time you're talking about this, what I see or what I hear here is really that two-way street, right? Like, I feel a lot of people will walk up to a manager and say, okay, I'm ready for the next level, and then expect them to hand you a plate of things that you're supposed to do in order to get there, right? But the reality is it's a two-way street. So if you're an employee, you definitely want to go with an idea, but also an understanding that there's going to be, you're going to have to work at this, right? Like, it's going to be your work plus their work equals where you want to be, right?
Yep.
And it's funny because I get, recently I had a conversation with somebody who said, hey, this show talks a lot about things from the employer's perspective, right? If you're a manager, this is what you can do. If you're a leader, this is what you can do. If you own a company, this is what you can do. We don't really talk a lot about from the other side, which is what we're discussing here, which is from an employee perspective. What are those things that you can do to make happen to engage in the industry, create growth, and then create that longevity that I think a lot of people are looking for? Because if you're here, you enjoy it, right? I mean, that's like the key to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I think one of the beautiful things about this industry is that there's something for everyone, right? It's perfectly fine to be here just because you need something and you're just here for now, right? There's nothing wrong with
Right.
that. I feel like a lot of people who end up, having long, beautiful careers in hospitality, started with just, oh, this is a thing I'm doing right now, or it's fitting into my schedule right now, or they've gone off to do things and they've come back. And I think that what we have now, and what certainly myself and team at Culinary Agents try to do, is for those who do want to pursue more and growth in the industry, is how do we help them? How do we enable them with the tools? How do we showcase um, what we call hospitality career paths? We have over 400 of them on our site, which is leaders, how they got to where they are, and what advice do they have for up and coming or for their peers, right? And I think that is so important, because a lot of times seeing an example or being able to kind of backtrace or backstep how somebody got to where they are really helps the individual. Again, going back to asking yourself the hard questions, right? Think through, right? And there's no wrong answer, right? You're asking yourself these questions. You should be honest, I hope. And seeing that not everyone gets to where they are, the same way, and there are so many different ways. um some take longer than others, some shortcut, right, for whatever reason. The key is to get those examples, get inspired, and then figure out what is going to be your own path. Like, what do you want to do, how are you going to get there, and who can help you?
Well, I think that's inspiring, and what I love about the hospitality industry is exactly what you outlined, right? Which is, uh, you know, i- there may be destination like similar destinations, but nobody got there the same way. Maybe you run into a few people that have semi-similar stories. But the great thing is you can kind of just create your own way. And sometimes you don't even know the destination, right? Like you don't even know where you're going to end up. You may have thought you wanted to be a restaurant general manager, and then all of a sudden you end up owning a dozen restaurants, or something completely different, right? You end up owning DoorDash or something like that. Who knows? Just from an idea of wanting to be part of the industry. So I think that's fascinating. And so you said you have over 400 or almost 400 like stories like this on your website.
Yes, and I'm pre-sharing, I'm oversharing right now, because we're going to be launching in a couple of months. But for the past 8 or so years, we've been collecting these hospitality career paths, currently called inspirational career paths on our site, inspirational timelines, excuse me. And the reason why we're relaunching them as hospitality career paths is because they're all, first of all, hospitality related. Um, but the intent of it and all the advice that is exactly to inspire and to showcase how these leaders got to where they are. And so whether you are an aspiring leader or just a peer that's going through your own path, there are so many nuggets of advice and inspiration that can just be derived by seeing, oh, this person who I've admired for X amount of years because they built this, that, and the other, and you see that they were a career changer. They used to be, an iBanker, or they, were a psychology, on path to be a psychology professor or something. And those stories are truly, I mean, they definitely bring a smile to my face when I go through them. And we've gotten really awesome feedback from it, because it can be tough. This is a really tough industry. Um, and you have to, there has to be a certain level of love and passion for it to continue to grind it out. And and once you reach a point where there is none, and all the other things are not are no longer meeting your personal requirements, then it's time to take all the skills and all the friends and networks that you've made during your time in the industry, and figure out what is your next passion. Like, how do you leverage everything you've learned, everything you've done in this industry, and bring that into your next career, down your next path. And I think that's something, again, also that's unique about this industry is it teaches you so many foundational skills, that there's a reason why. I forget, I saw a stat somewhere. I shouldn't misquote stats, but in general, it was like 10% of all Americans have worked in hospitality in some way, shape, or form in their lifetime, right? And I love that, because, and I actually do think that that is pretty positive. That's a stat. Um, it's a great first job. It's a great job for folks looking for flexible schedules, and and it's hard work. So, those who have never spent any time in this industry, I encourage you, go wait a table and, put a smile on your face for, 12 hours. And, and you really, it really prepares you for a lot of other things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I think you probably know that this is coming, right? But with all of that advice and all those inspirations on your site, I'm going to ask you for your advice here. What kind of advice do you have for people that are in the industry or getting started in the industry from a hospitality perspective?
Yeah, wow, I have nuggets. I always encourage folks to pick, two or three people that you admire in the industry, or that you want their job. Like, who is it that has the job that you want? And backtrack, study it a little bit. What are the skills they have? Where did they start? What did they do? What are the experiences they have? And use that as both an inspiration point, because everyone has their own path, but also to figure out for yourself what are the skills that you're missing. What are the experiences that would ultimately help you be a business owner, or to own your own sauce conglomerate. Or maybe your goal is to get out of the industry. Okay, what do you need?
Right.
Or you're trying to career change into the industry. And from there is how do you acquire those skills and those experiences? And then
Absolutely.
be gentle with yourself, right? You can make a plan, and I always encourage people to make a plan. But let it evolve. Things change, things happen, and you have to be kind to yourself, and figure out if something needs to change. It needs to change. And going back to my earlier point, the great thing is all the skills that you've learned throughout your time in this industry, you could take it with you elsewhere. The industry's not going anywhere, so you need to take a break. So be it.
I love that. I think a lot of people put this plan in place, right? And they think they've got to hit this milestone by this time, and acquire this skill set by that time. And then life happens, right? I mean, you have no idea what your employer is going to do. You have no idea if somebody's going to come out of the woodworks and offer you something completely different that completely attracts you away. You could start a family, and let me tell you, that'll mess everything up. Your whole plan goes out the window when that happens. There's definitely, I love that piece of advice. That is phenomenal. Is keep building towards something, have a goal, mirror somebody that the job you'd want to be in, but then be easy on yourself. I like that. I like that. That is the nice bow on the end of that advice. That is perfect. So Alice, if people want to find out more about you, they want to watch out for when you're going to launch those stories, where are they going to go to see this?
Well, me going back to my bad self-promotion, we're going to go to culinaryagents.com. Sign up for a free profile, click around. We have a whole resource section with free resources, hints and tips, and industry related advice that you can feel free to read it and look at whenever you have time. You can have a profile. You can profile for free and check out what's going on in the industry, and go from there. If you see a job you like, or an employer that you want to work with, take the plunge.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. I want to thank you very much for all of this great conversation. I think a lot of people have been really curious about, I think, as you put it, finding their next passion in the industry. And so I think a lot of people have been really excited about learning more about that. So I think you answered a ton of questions here, and even gave people a place to go. So I really appreciate that, and hope we can connect again in the future.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I absolutely. You know where to find me.
Sounds good. All right, Alice. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk next time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.